Welcome to Doctors at Work. My name's Matt Daniel, and this podcast is about doctors' careers. Today, I'm having a conversation with Pietro Garbelli, who's a book author, and we're talking about learning to hear and be heard. How can we improve the quality of professional and leadership communication at work? In this episode, Pietro tells me that hearing others and learning to hear are both skills that can be learned and developed. It starts with a mindset focused on service, the other's needs and common goals, and less on personal ego and agenda. Now, whilst being in one place for a long time creates important institutional memory, there's also an advantage to being an outsider, because that enables thinking and acting in a way that solves problems in a different way to what the usual way of working is. Having eye opens for opportunities to make a difference really matters. Welcome, Pietro. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Good morning, Matt. Thank you for inviting me to your podcast. My name is Pietro Garbelli. I'm an acute physician. I originally trained in Italy, but moved to the UK 16 years ago. And I've been working in acute hospitals ever since, making my career progression. And I currently work as a clinical director for acute medicine in a hospital in North London. And I'm also the author of The Doctor's Voice, the book that you read and brought to this conversation.
Yeah.
It came out early this year in 2023. Actually, last year. I'm still on the wrong clock. And it's been well received, and I'm very proud of being talking a little bit about this today.
Well, congratulations on getting the book published. I mean, I've certainly very much enjoyed reading it. Can you tell us what's the book about? What's the thinking? What's the intention? What's the aim?
I wrote this book mainly for doctors like us to recognize and talk about the problems that we face every day, the amount of frustrations that make our job harder than it's meant to be. And I draw a lot of from my personal experience and talking to colleagues, reflecting on our collective experience, also with my business coach, Tony Salimi. I talk about my path that brought me at some point to feel completely burnt out and pretty much hate my job and want to quit. I came to the point that I was planning to take action and stop being a doctor, but for some reason I couldn't really make any steps forward. So I spent a lot of time reflecting on what I really wanted to do with my life and reconnecting with my initial vocation and wanting to actually do something to make the experience of being a doctor better for everyone so that we can be at our best for our patients. I observed so much suffering amongst our colleagues, and that reflects in poor quality of healthcare that we're able to give to our patients. And I've seen that as a healthcare user or as a relative, bringing my my relatives to hospital appointments and so on. So I really felt at some point I wanted to make a difference and do something that can help healthcare.
Thank you. And the particular thing that I thought we might focus on in our discussion today is this idea of listening and speaking up and hearing. And one of the chapters in your book is called Learn to Hear and to be Heard. And I really sort of like that phrase, learn to hear and to be heard. Tell me a bit more about that phrase.
It came from reflecting on some issues that I encountered early in my leadership roles. I constantly felt frustrated when I was talking about issues that I was looking to find a solution for with managers and executives. It felt like they didn't really hear me. Very often the problem was dismissed, it was not a priority. I couldn't get through. And I thought, how come? I thought as doctors are good at communicating. We spend a lot of time talking to patients, listening to their concerns, finding common ground. And I realized then, talking with my coach, that there's a whole set of different skills that allow us to connect to people that work in different fields and in general in life. It's about being able to really listen to what people's values are, meaning what ticks them, what motivates them, what is important to them. And sometimes it's a mixture of what is important for them in their profession. For example, the targets that are imposed upon them because of the job description and the role that they have in the hospital, in their organization, but also in their personal lives. We're all different, even between us doctors. For some of us, what is most important is dedicating time to research. For others, is developing a service, innovation, or spending time with our families and partners, or learning and or teaching. So there are different things that become our top priorities. And if we're not aware of what is important to each other and what is important for the organization, it's very difficult to align those values and have a conversation so that we have a win-win situation where we tick our boxes and we find really a common ground. Mm-hmm. So it was a difficult journey for me. I found it extremely challenging. I wanted to share that with other colleagues so that we can learn to empower ourselves, being better leaders and pitch ideas and talk about what is important to make our daily experiences better for our patients.
I like that that analogy of multiple different things being important, because I'm thinking, so, I might want to see a patient at 8:30 and I might sort of say, I need to go to a lunchtime meeting, so I don't want the patient booked at the end of the clinic. Can I see them at 8:30? And that's what suits me. But then the people that work the clinic are going to say, well, that means we're going to have to open the clinic, so we don't want to do that. And somebody else might sort of say, oh, there's a long waiter. Can you not see the long waiter at 8:30? And somebody else might say, I've got a research patients to see and I want to use that room for research patient at 8:30. Or somebody else might say, I've got private patients to see and I want to use that room for a private patient at 8:30. And it's very easily, you can kind of see how that room being available at 8:30, all of a sudden that everybody has a different idea as to what the room should be used. And actually, they're all perfectly reasonable ideas, aren't they?
Yeah, totally. And they all fulfill a role, and something that is important for the patients, for healthcare, for the development of knowledge. But obviously, it really depends on finding a common ground and an agreement. And sometimes it takes adjustments in our personal schedule. One thing that I talk about in the book is how very often our job planning, our schedules are unrealistic, and how poorly we sometimes plan for activities and deadlines. I don't know about you, but I very often find myself in times of the year when I'm drowning with deadlines and everybody wants a piece of me, and I keep getting emails saying, you need to do this, you need to do that at the last minute. And times of the year when there isn't much happening from an administrative, bureaucratic point of view. And all of that can be changed. It takes a little bit of planning and agreement and understanding. But if we keep working in silos and being unable to communicate, and we don't know what each other's workload is, it's very easy to just assume, well, you have that as part of your job, so you just have to do it.
Mm-hmm. And the danger there is that there's often lots of really good opportunities that come, or there might be things we have to do, but often they're really good opportunities, and you say, yeah, I'd love to do that. That would be a brilliant thing to do. And then, you at least sort of in my case, I say yes to things, and then I hope that they don't all come at the same time. So because that's the problem, isn't it? Say, oh, I'd love to do that, I'd love to do this, and then you spend time thinking. But if you're really unlucky, you find yourself that in the same week, there are sort of 7 or 8 deadlines that all need to be done, and all, as you say, all of that then needs to be planned for, doesn't it? Because you need to think ahead rather than just think of tomorrow or today.
Absolutely. It also comes sometimes to the lack of supporting structures around us. You think about people of our seniority in equivalent organizations. They often get, I don't know, a secretary, a PA, and that's nowadays a rarity in a lot of healthcare systems. We have to do everything on our own. We have to manage our own schedule and diary and schedule meetings and resolve conflicts. There's so much going on, and sometimes you really wish I could delegate some of these tasks. And there isn't much in terms of personal help, but also the systems that we use sometimes are obsolete. There's a whole lot of apps and software that we use in our personal lives. And then when we come to work, we have to put up with clunky systems and software from a decade ago. It can be very challenging.
Mm-hmm. I have to say, with the PAs, I'm feeling very lucky because I have the world's best PA, and she's called Mandy, and I don't know what I would do without her. So I'm feeling so lucky. So I'm walking away thinking I need to be a bit more grateful for what I have, and I need to say thank you to Mandy a bit more often because she is the world's best PA.
It's easy to forget, and sometimes when it's easier, I think, earlier in our career when, because of training, we quickly jump every 6 months or every year into a different organization, and you immediately notice the differences. You compare, even unknowingly in your mind, that was better in this other organization. I wish I had that. But after you settle in your job for a while, you kind of tend to forget what it is like, and you don't know what others have access to or don't have access to.
Absolutely. Let's go back to sort of this idea of learning to hear and to be heard. So let's kind of start with the second bit about getting heard. So what do people need to do in order to get heard?
And there is something that we are constantly asked for, which is giving feedback. And my experience in my early years was it was ineffective. I remember signing a lot of petitions for change, answering to every single questionnaire that was sent to me, every survey, and then waiting for something to change and observing with a lot of frustration where all this information goes. And then I started my own initiative of talking to people and trying to find solutions, and sometimes connecting and bypassing certain layers of the organization to go directly and talk to those who could provide the solution, to then offer the solution to the decision makers and the executives. And I remember occasionally that approach shocked some of my colleagues. For example, when in a hospital, I was working as a trust grade registrar. I went and talked to some programmers and developers in the IT department, talking about a problem we had. They said, yes, we can easily develop this piece of software. And then I talked to my supervisor and said, I found a solution for a problem that we have. Do you want to talk about that and consider it and organize a meeting? They were shocked, but then we had that meeting and things went forward, and it became a reality. So my recommendation is don't be discouraged by finding obstacles in the structure of the organization where you work. By giving feedback, opening feedback channels, you can achieve a lot. I find that very often there is information flowing into a direction from the top down, but there aren't many channels that are preset, and existing that allow information and feedback to go from the bottom up. Sometimes decision makers have access to a lot of data, but not a lot of understanding and knowledge of the issues and the problems and the obstacles that people at the shop floor experience day to day. So it's important to give this feedback so that they can make good decision making.
I hope you're enjoying the show. Please click subscribe so you'll be notified when new episodes become available. This podcast is part of my mission to help doctors create successful and meaningful careers. You can be part of that mission too by forwarding this show to one person who you think might benefit from listening. Thank you. Now on with the show. I'm interested in your mindset. There you were a registrar and you went to talk to coders, and what kind of mindset did you need to say, okay, I'm going to go and do something that nobody's ever done before? I'm guessing that no registrar before you has ever gone and spoken. Maybe sort of nowadays it's perhaps a little bit more, but in the past, that just wouldn't happen, would it? So what kind of mindset did you have that enabled you to do that?
At that time, I was a complete outsider. I had just moved to the UK from Italy, and maybe it was the dissonance between what I was expecting the world around me to be reactive, and I was possibly less aware of hierarchy and roles, and I didn't have much trouble connecting to people. So I connected as a friend to a person that moved from a nursing job to an IT job, and we talked about a problem while we're having a drink, and he said, well, I think I know the right person for you to talk to. But as I said, being an outsider, I had a different approach in a lot of things. I remember finding a lot of frustration with a computer that was crucial for my role on a day-to-day basis, where I had to enter the information for referrals that were coming through a phone at a very high speed, and that computer had a lot of software issues. So it had been reported, we were waiting for the solution, and I just got so frustrated that I took the desktop, wrote it down to IT, and I said, fix it. I need it now. And they did fix it within a couple of hours and brought it back. They'd never seen anything like that, but maybe being a little bit bold and working outside the normal boundaries of behavior that we are expected to have sometimes can achieve something different.
Okay, so there's so much to unpick with that. So the connection, that human touch, that's really important. That you're a human being, they're a human being. You talk, you go in, you talk to people, you make connections, and then magic happens out of that. And it starts with the human touch. Not an email or not a ticket sort of onto an automated system, but an actual sort of human to human interaction, and then magic happens. So I think the thing with the outsider, that kind of makes perfect sense to me. But on the other hand, it's terrifying, because if an outsider sort of can think outside of the box and bypass the normal channel, then that means that everybody else who's an insider has been conditioned into a straitjacket of this is how we think, this is how we behave, this is how we act, and that everybody else then is conditioned into a box, and people don't see beyond the box, and that's terrifying, isn't it?
I think it's inevitable. I noticed that also in myself after being in an organization for a while. You kind of forget what your really early frustrations were and what you immediately noticed that was dysfunctional. For example, in my current organization, I made a note when I started my role. I wrote a few pages of issues and recommendations, and a few years later, we are working on those issues. We are trying to resolve so many of those problems that I first noticed. But I have to admit, if I hadn't written it down, I would have probably forgotten by now that it was something I noticed as an outsider, because it becomes your day-to-day routine. This is how we do it. These are the systems that we have available and the challenges, and you forget that there is a much easier way to do it, maybe with a different approach.
Yeah, that actually really resonates if I think with where I am. I mean, I've been a consultant 12 years and with the same trust probably for 22 years, majority of 22 years worked for one trust. And whenever I have new colleagues that start, there's and I can sort of say actually that there's probably one frustration that every new colleague that starts, and they sort of say, why do you do it this way? And I said, well, it's just how we do it. And so I said, but why can't you change? And I said, well, we tried, but it's too difficult. And it's, yeah, and every time that a new person starts, I'm reminded kind of, so yeah, this is a real problem. But it's how we do it. It's too difficult. It's unfixable. So we plod on. But it takes a new consultant who says, I can't believe you work like this. And I
Yeah.
can say, well, that's how we work.
I talk about doctors changing job very often. Sometimes I see that your situation, being in the same organization for such a long time, is quite unique nowadays. It used to be the norm in the past, when doctors used to have a sort of loyalty to an organization and spend most of their work life within the same organization, and they were supported to make a career and pursue whatever aspirations they had, and remain loyal to the organization. And now we see the opposite. We see a very dynamic work market where doctors are constantly looking for something better. They constantly get frustrated about so many issues, and they constantly want to change every few years. Every few years, there's a different opportunity. So many that don't want to be in an organization at all for very similar reasons, and decide to work all their career as temporary workers, as locum doctors, or with fixed-term contracts. And it has some benefits, where you join a new place with a fresh mindset, and you might bring some challenges, but it also takes away so much know-how, so much value. Each time you have to start from from square one and build up the knowledge on how the organization works and what your role becomes in it. And I also see it as a sign of receiving less support, maybe, in our organizations. Sometimes the opportunities to pursue your aspirations are very limited. We don't feel appreciated. We don't see we are not given the time, maybe, to do something slightly different, or we perceive that there are better work conditions elsewhere. And that affects inevitably the work market. And on top of that, a lot of doctors, a lot of colleagues decide to look for better work conditions in a completely different environment. They might switch from public healthcare to private. They might go abroad. They might decide to become entrepreneurs and quit the medical career. And that's the biggest motivation that brought me to write this book, also for decision makers and policy makers, to unveil the problems that affect our profession, so that we can really focus on retaining the workforce by looking after doctors. Not just talk about remuneration and pay, we do nowadays with strikes, but look at a whole wider range of issues that we need to resolve.
And actually, there's an important message there for the people that are, in senior roles, you and I included, that it's certainly, I mean, I think I've probably been very lucky with the support and encouragement that I've had in my career, and very, very grateful for that. I think equally, then there comes a time where you think, okay, what do I or what do other senior doctors need to do to create ways of working, cultures, support systems, development opportunities that mean that, as you say, that we do retain people. How do we structure people's lives? How do we structure people's career in the way that makes it attractive, that encourages people to stay, and that encourages people to thrive and flourish. So that's an important thing. And I guess the other thing with staying in the same organization versus moving around, one of the things that's coming up for me there is that the sweet spot is how can you have the best of both worlds, because there's a lot to be said for having that that memory, that the knowledge, the understanding, and that maybe that that it's just too difficult to fix, because there are things that are better accepted, and there's no point in getting frustrated with them. But then also, how do you marry that institutional memory with constantly having eyes open and constantly looking for new things? And for me, that's a mindset, yeah. And the mindset is every day I'm thinking, is there a better way of doing this? How can we improve things? So it's constantly looking for opportunities, constantly looking for ways that we make change. What's new, what's coming up, what's developing, where's the opportunity? And then a problem that maybe is 10 years old, that 10 years ago was unfixable, but something changes now, and maybe that problem all of a sudden becomes fixable. But it's that mindset of looking for ways to improve things, for looking for ways to make a difference.
Absolutely. And there are also so many opportunities nowadays to connect with other organizations and other colleagues, not only, for example, in the same city, in the same country, by organizing visits to another unit, another healthcare provider, but we can also connect virtually. We can attend conferences worldwide. One of the things that I have observed when I moved to the UK was finding how, for many reasons, in some specialties, the conferences and the organizations are a little bit self-referential. I used to have a completely different mindset when being educated in Italy. We were always looking at the rest of the world as a better opportunity, a better source for challenge, inspiration, research. We maybe there's a little bit of culture where we are used to talk down about ourselves and our own country and our own healthcare system. But it helps to keep your eyes focused on what is available. And I found a little bit of a different approach many years ago when I moved to the UK, and all the conferences were local, and it was a fresh breath of air when the Society for Acute Medicine organized finally a conference abroad, and finally we were confronting ideas with colleagues from other European countries, and see how the same issue was finding different solutions that fit in the local healthcare system. I think we need a lot more of that, and we have the technology and the opportunities now to do that.
It's interesting because there's two things that I religiously go, or there's probably three things that I religiously go to. One is a UK society held in UK. One is a pediatric ENT European society, and another one is an ENT in general. That are both, the latter two are both European meetings, and I religiously go to them, and they are Europe wide. Often it's quite nice if there's somewhere nice and warm in Italy, actually. So that's typically, that makes it an attractive place to go as well. And usually they're held sort of somewhere nice. I think the next one is in Dublin again. Great city to visit. So that kind of
some specialties like yours are wiser, and they have a longer tradition of connecting across borders. My specialty of acute medicine is probably one of the youngest, and I think we're still learning to connect with. There is no common definition of what acute medicine is. There is a different organization and training in each country. So we are still in the learning phase of defining the specialty, finding a common ground, finding even a common name, and understanding. Sometimes you talk to people in the US and you have to explain what you do. Probably in your culture, in your organization, I would be called a hospitalist, I guess.
But it's actually interesting for ENT. We have exactly the same thing that what ENT people do in Europe. An awful lot of that is stuff that I don't understand, or it doesn't exist in UK, or we wouldn't do it. But we that makes it richer, I think. No, it doesn't. It does the fact that it isn't standardized. That for me, that's what makes the conference exciting. Yeah. Let's sort of go back to learning to hear. What would be your suggestions as to how people can learn to hear?
Well, first of all, I would suggest shut up and listen. Depending on our character, our impulse, sometimes we want to impress, we want to look smart, we want to fill the gaps. We have this urge to be talking. But sometimes if you just listen to the person who's talking and try to understand what they're saying instead of thinking about what is the next thing you want to say, you hear a lot differently. You start paying attention to the language, to the words they choose, to what is the underlying message. And that gives you a lot of opportunities to then connect on a deeper level, on a personal level, and to connect to what is important to them. I think that sometimes we learn it the hard way also on our clinical roles when clumsily at the beginning of our careers we follow a certain pattern and we bombard our patients as medical students with a lot of questions. We follow a standard line of thought. We might spend half an hour or longer taking a history, and that changes completely down the line in your career when you start paying attention to what people say and quickly go to where you think you can find the answer. It's a skill, like we have taken years to develop it in our clinical roles. It can take some time to develop it in a leadership role, but it can be done.
So there's something there about less about my agenda and my ego and my importance, and a bit more about what are you saying, a focus on you, or possibly a focus on what we have in common, but a focus on you, a focus on what we have in common, rather than a focus on my ego and my agenda and making me look good.
And also an approach of being of service very often helps, like we do with our patients, where we humble ourselves and we're just there to help. If we adopt the same approach with the other people we connect with and try to make it a little bit more about them and a little bit less about us, we can open a lot of doors with that approach.
I'll bring us to a close, and maybe if I can invite you to share what would be your top tips for doctors at work.
Top tips, I would say in a nutshell, find ways to be heard and shine. Don't be scared about giving feedback. Make your problems known. Try to find solution. Be creative in your approach about finding solutions and connecting to the right people in your organization. And don't forget to shine and be yourself. We are all unique. We all have lots of unique qualities, and your organization can benefit from having you in that position. You just need to find the right support system around you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.